Full Service Radio is proudly supported and hosted by Simplecast, the easiest way for a podcast creator to publish and distribute audio on the internet. For more information, visit simplecast.com.
Full Service Radio.
Peace, everyone, and welcome to the Edible Activist Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa L. Jones, broadcasting live from the lobby of the Line, D.C. This podcast is where dynamic people of color in the food and agricultural space share their personal food journeys, passions, and perspectives that stem from the land, all exemplifying the spirit of activism in their own edible way. Let's get started. Peace, everyone, and welcome to the Edible Activist Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa L. Jones, broadcasting live from the lobby of the Line, D.C., here on Full Service Radio. So for today's show, DMV's Black food and beverage scene and the advocates supporting them. But check this out. Pardon me, guys. Check this out. According to the National Restaurant Association, only 8% of African Americans and Blacks make up restaurant owners and the same share of restaurant managers. Food service is a $60 billion industry from what I understand, okay? So where can we fit in? Where do we fit in? Because I want a bigger piece of the pie. Well, I'm sure other folks want a bigger piece of the pie.
Yes.
But meet Chef Rod Tate, Dr. Aaron Tucker, and Andra Johnson, a.k.a. AJ, who are the co-founders of DMV Black Restaurant Week. Their mission is to celebrate and support Black hospitality, food, and beverage entrepreneurs and employees through awareness, professional development, external resources, and events. Together, affectionately, you guys are known as TJ. That's what I got for your website.
That's right.
Did I say it right?
Oh, Tiage.
Okay, Tiage. Oh, bougie. Okay, Tiage. Welcome, Tiage. Welcome, guys, to the show.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you so much for being here.
Excited to have you. So one of the reasons why I started my platform, Food Talks in Color, is because I was going into these spaces where I didn't see enough of us in food and agriculture, right? Mm-hmm. And then I started this podcast as I wanted to amplify our voices because, you know, I'm all about this thing called inclusion, okay?
That's right.
So when I hear 8%, that number is very troubling to me.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You are a platform that provides resources to owners and restaurateurs and employees in the Black hospitality scene. But back to this 8%, why?
Well,
what's up with this other 92%?
We want to first say when someone else is counting us, they always count wrong.
Ooh.
Okay.
Ooh.
I wouldn't, with all due respect, I mean, the census gets us wrong every year, right?
That's another show.
Yeah, okay, you got it. And so I think that it was good to count, and the count that was made gave us a starting point to begin to look at that and begin to, like you just did, ask what can we do about it, right? And this is one of the reasons why DMV Black Restaurant was, established to increase that number, but also to make sure that everybody is counted. We need to make awareness part of, what we do so well.
Yeah. That was a great answer, man. I gotta go after you. The 8% is a very, very low number, and I would say the counting wrong is definitely correct, but is that number higher or lower, right? And we're talking about actual established businesses that are profitable and are going to move forward.
Got it.
So
okay.
that is definitely a plus minus somewhere in there.
That's my sister. She's brilliant.
And then
because you just broke that down there's a difference.
Yeah,
that is.
Most definitely. And especially in this area, sort of what we've seen is, and especially when it comes to how we wanted to put out our platform to business owners, we have several different tiers of that, right? And it was for that very reason, because we wanted to make sure that it was inclusive in that space, right? But money is the biggest thing, right? That generational wealth, that intergenerational wealth, that being able to pass it down, that being able to go to investors.
Can someone pass me a tambourine?
No, I'm talking about
that they grew up with your mom or your dad, and they have legacy and legacy and legacy and legacy. Being able to ask for that, and just walking up to someone and saying, "Hey, you knew my parents," or "Hey, you know me. Can I have this? I want to do this." There's not a lot of that opportunity within the Black community yet.
Yet.
We're getting there. Not yet. So that is a big one. And then I would also say, especially for, just to be specific, geared towards DC, a lot of restaurateurs, again, with the legacy, you grow up in restaurants. So that culture is passed down to you. So you understand hospitality from a young age. You understand the inner workings of a restaurant from a young age. You understand service. You understand the business aspect of that. You might have, come up through the ranks and started as a dishwasher, but if your mom and dad are running that, who gets the business after that? You do, right? And so if that's not the type of legacy that's being passed down, then that's not something that you're going to feel that's intuitive of a business to go into. As Black people, we have a lot of pride, and I love that about us.
A ton of it.
Right, a ton of it. But you need to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, and that's kind of it. And so when we're pushed towards other things, then, food, service, and hospitality, it sort of becomes a black sheep in terms of a career.
That's so funny because my parents told me to get a government job when I graduated college, and I was like, absolutely not.
But they said that because you'd be set, though.
Yeah, and they said it with
Because I would
love,
be set.
girl.
They did say it with love.
They said it with love.
But I always
and fear.
knew. I always knew that it wasn't for me.
Yes.
But I fell into the hospitality industry in a whole nother lane. So events, as I've told you guys before, and a lot of you know that I'm a corporate event planner by trade. But Farad, you are definitely in the restaurant industry.
Yeah,
You had a business. Still have a business.
That's right.
AJ, you are in hospitality, bartender, and I'm sure do a ton of other things.
Investing, general managing, beverage director.
Big. That's really big. And Dr. Erin Tucker, who is actually teaches at Georgetown. Let me not get them confused. Hospitality.
Yes.
So you are constantly, in a room full of students who want to enter this sector in various lanes, but I do want to go back to the 90s.
Well, she did her years of service also too, so she didn't jump right into academia. She was serving tables and so she has some of that under her fingernails too. That grit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hospitality, that's hard. It's
a lot.
Hard. It's hard. But can we go back to the 90s just for maybe 80s and 90s
come on
just
now.
for a little bit? So Farad, you're DC native.
Third generation.
Third generation.
That's right.
Paint the DC food scene for us. Back in the 80s and 90s.
Okay.
Because there were mom and pops.
Yes, a lot.
A ton of them.
Yeah. I mean, just like what your mom and dad told you to do was the norm. Get that good government job.
That's exactly what she said.
So your lunchtime, you can come to a restaurant like mine that was on 8th Street. And we fed a lot of DC government workers. And we were able to also do catering with a lot of DC agencies, the DC courts. But there were a lot of restaurants before the corner carryouts, because we could afford the space. We could afford. My auntie had a catering. My uncle had a catering. We could afford the space to do it, and it wasn't all the regulations. Also, that's just to open a restaurant in this DC area now. It's about $1 million. And this is before you open the door. This is getting the licensing. This is acquiring the space. And I hope that you get the licensing first before you get a lease on the space, because there's so many people who waste so much money on the space and can't even get the space licensed, because it is a process of opening a restaurant in this area. And then after you do all that, just having the money alone, like my partner said, AJ, that is sometimes an incredible lift for an individual. And a lot of us aren't connected to those groups, those restaurants groups. And so the Black food experience in D.C. was really wiped out because a lot of the children didn't want to take over grandma or mother's catering service or small mom and pop that didn't have but maybe 10 chairs inside of it. You know what I mean? And so they could not sustain. And the last thing, we did not own our buildings.
It happens in the South.
Yes.
It happens here. It happens everywhere. This whole idea of us just, we own what's happening inside of the business, but not the actual building, not the actual ground, not the actual doors, not the actual
structure.
Yeah. So when they tell you that now this and this happens, this is real talk. This happened to me. I owned a building on 8th Street. And
you owned the building?
The building that I was in, I was renting, right? But I was able to buy a building. I was able to get a lease on, I was able to get a mortgage on the building on 8th Street, right? 2 buildings that I got zoned as one, which was hard to do because the prior owners illegally opened the wall. So I bought a property that had already had problems on it. I was so emotional about buying a property in my neighborhood around the corner from the project community I grew up in. And I was like, I'm going to do my restaurant. I'm going to put housings on this top floor for my staff. I'm going to do this thing. I couldn't get funding. And so I dumped 3 years of just trying to sustain this building while still paying rent on the building that I was on, right? Please. And it just crushed. And then when the building that I was in was bought out by a larger development, I didn't have the millions of dollars to counter offer what, and I did not have the context of understanding what my rights were. So when it was time to move, and when I had to move, then the new developers wanted to say, well, we couldn't negotiate it. But that's time my stove is already out the building. And try to restart something that you had to abruptly break. So I tell people all the time, it wasn't just losing a business. It was the impact that the business had on my staff, we were feeding 3,000 children a day. It was the impact on the community. So when a Black business or a business that is steeped into the community closed, trust me, I still have people today saying, when are you going to open your next one? I still have people who still driving to D.C. and say, I can't find your spot.
I'm looking for you.
I'm not there. And there are lots of Black-owned businesses that are like, those trees that fall in the forest that no one remembers anymore. Yeah.
It's so crazy you say that because I've had conversations with business owners, like right on Georgia Avenue, across from where Walter Reed used to be.
Right.
And
That's
they said we used to be like doing some numbers back in the day.
Yeah.
And now they're either not there or business is just like falling to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And
really hard.
That's a reality.
And this is why we have this Black Restaurant Week, because we want to show. AJ comes in and she works with the young people we work with. She shows people, Dr. Tucker communicates to those students that it is possible. Don't think that it's not possible, but you have to do it intelligently. And there's a system to winning in this game. And we want to teach that. That's why our conference is so important. We promote our businesses, that they do exist. Lots of them out here. And it's amazing when you go to one and you find one and you got your girlfriends with you. It's like, yo. So that's why we support them. But we want them to come to our conference so that they can understand how to link up. Cooperative economics really works.
Absolutely.
And we teach people how to apply that to the restaurant industry.
And I definitely want to, we're going to touch on more about the conference that's coming up because I'm really excited to dive into those conversations. Dr. Tucker, what are those realistic conversations that you have with some of your students who either want to start a business, thinking about starting a business of hospitality, maybe they, want to, it could be a food truck, anything. What are those realistic conversations? As you've done it before academia, you were in that space. What are those conversations like?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that many times, everybody wants to own a business now. Yeah. So that's not even like, there's no convincing of that. But it's still breaking the glamour side of the industry. It's what they see on Food Network. They want to, dress, some cute way and walk around their wine bar.
Oh, gosh.
And I literally had a conversation. I have a conversation with students, but just people. I know an anesthesiologist, a pediatric anesthesiologist, I love her to death, that I had a great conversation with. She's like, I'm just really burnt out, so I want to open up a wine bar. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, why don't you take a vacation first? And then let's kind of take a moment.
Burn out again.
Yeah, you're going to be burnt out.
AJ's like, I know all about it.
No way. So we start with the understanding of really like, what do you want to do? What's your goals out of this? And is this something that you just want as your side hustle, or is this something you really want as your business? So that's my first question I ask, every time I hear someone say that. And my second question is always, who's on your team? Ooh. Because if you don't have a clear answer of that, then you're not ready at all to go into any details, but I'll kind of know where you stand.
That is actually some really great questions. Is this a side hustle? Which is fine.
Which is
looking just to package up some
fine, but
some
in that
partners?
Invest.
Yep,
Invest.
because then it goes into the strategies. Is it maybe just invest in it,
right.
So that you can have time to walk around your wine
exactly
with your heels on.
and that is totally fine. But don't be the face of your business walking around your wine bar with a glass of wine here.
Oh my goodness.
Exactly.
Hello. It's work.
Melissa L. Jones here with the Edible Activist Podcast here on Full Service Radio, broadcasting live from the Line DC. I am joined by the amazing co-founders of DMV Black Restaurant Week. I have Farad Tate in the house, AJ, and Dr. Erin Tucker. Thank you guys for being here. They are coming up on an awesome restaurant event and conference, which we'll talk more about next month, right? Next month, we'll get into those dates. But these are your advocates, y'all. You mean supporting all things Black hospitality here in the DMV. There's a lot going on, from gentrification to, buildings being, put up and restaurants being torn down, and and just the inclusion aspect. I start off with a stat. There's only about 8%. We got a slice of the pie of the industry, and it's billions out here. But you guys have a platform where you're bringing resources to continue the professional development of those who are already in this space. Offer, resources to those who are having realistic conversations, and offering resources to those who are looking to be in the hospitality space. So I am an inspiring, restaurateur. Am I saying that right? Restaurateur, whatever. Okay. And I come across DMV Black Restaurant Week. What can I pull from you guys? What is that next? Right.
Well, going back to that statistic as well, that 8% was also inclusive of managers and those. And so what inspired us to do this was the fact that there was just 2018 was an interesting year in the space of African Americans and how they were treated in establishments, et cetera. And I kept reading these articles that said, where are the Black chefs and where are the Black general managers and all this. And I'm like, well, I've been in this space now for 20 years. I'm like, what do you mean, where are they? They're actually everywhere. And the uniqueness of being in the DMV is that there's literally a talent for African-American, multiple talents in all these spaces. Yes. But I realized very quickly after reflecting that there was not a platform for them. And I even remember this back when I originally started teaching at Johnson & Wales. I was just a little bit more cognizant of, Food and Wine magazine, and they always have these top chefs of the year, and I would never see any African Americans or Black Americans. I mean, that's changing a little bit now, but for the most part, it was just not on those platforms. And so I'm like, is it the fact that they don't exist, or the fact that there's not really a platform to be able to showcase? And so that's where the inspiration to put this together came from. And then after doing some research on different Black Restaurant Weeks and the model, things such as that, we're like, this could be a great kickoff as a platform, and then we can continue doing programming throughout the year.
Wow. And we were in the White House cooking.
Yes, that's right.
We invented several different ways
Absolutely.
to use peanuts.
Yeah.
We invented food culture.
Yeah.
Well, Black wealth started in the service industry. I mean, after that war that we helped win, really, I can say we won. We came back to our small towns that we were no longer just farming. We went back to the farm, but we began to use those same skill sets that we learned during slavery to begin to launch our businesses. And so those chefs that were cooking in that time frame became the chefs of the restaurant in that town. I mean, Black Wall Street is real, and that Black Wall Streets were made by people with skills, getting paid fair, getting paid by their brothers and sisters, their aunts and uncles, which were businesses. So we have been in the service business where we have generated wealth for generations. I had the pleasure yesterday to sit beside a woman who talked about her father's peanut and farm and 30 some odd acres of land. And I'm like, what? I mean, how many people can say that their daddy had 39 some odd acres of land and they sold peanuts? So, but those peanuts gave her family of, at that time, 8, the wealth for them all to go to college. So the service business has done us well for years. We have to get back to dominating it because it's in our DNA. We know how to love, we know how to cook, we know how to serve. And we, like my partner says, we need to get back to the pride in service.
Layers. A lot of this, and I've seen it because I've managed a ton of people in hospitality spaces, right? The connotation of service versus the connotation of hospitality, right? There's an intersection there for sure, but the way that it's understood and the way that it is approached depends on how you look at the word and how it affects you and how it triggers you and how you react when it is said to you, right? If someone says, you're my server, okay. As a Black person, I don't necessarily want to go out and be of service to anyone.
No, you don't.
That was done already. Mm-hmm. We got past that.
Yep.
But as a hospitality professional, you learn that people are coming into your home. This is your home, right? And I think that a lot of people sort of forget that aspect of it.
The business.
Right? The actual business of it is that, no, remember when that person said that you're a really great cook? Remember that person said, hey, you should really sell your stuff. Okay, they said that to you in your home, in your space, and all that a restaurant is recreating that space on a larger platform. And so having the tools and the understanding to do that is it's very difficult when you have another sort of mindset where it comes to well, no, now I'm just servicing other people. And so I think once you settle in with the word hospitality, then we can get back to serving the community and giving back to the community and using our skills to give what we have. But the understanding of the two are very, very different.
It's very professional.
Yeah.
You have to be professional in this.
Well, Dr. Tucker, you remember we were both at an event that I actually was part of some months ago. It was a Pineapple DC event, and I sat on this panel, and there were 2 young women who stood up later during the program, and they have this ice cream company. I think they're based out of Union Kitchen or something. I'm not 100% sure. And they said to me, when we're in the kitchen, I look around and I see my white counterparts, who have these businesses. They have more resources than us, and they're able to build their business, at a much more rapid pace than we are. I mean, we're struggling just to, where can we get our dairy products or our milk, to make our ice cream or, our produce or whatever. And she was just like, why? And she said it with frustration. She asked the question with frustration. Why are our white counterparts, at, these shared spaces or around us, why are they able to why do they have access to financial resources that we don't? And we're struggling. We have this great brand and we're frustrated.
Right. Well, part of it was when we talk about intergenerational wealth, that was one of the avenues. Mm-hmm. But the resources aren't just always financial. Mm-hmm. I say that Black people get the memo last. We definitely don't write it, and then when the memo is released, we are getting it so late that everything has already been taken, and now we're paying more money. Mm-hmm. A big resource,
and we have to work harder for it.
And we have to work
because
harder.
That's what I told her. I said it's out there. Mm-hmm. The resource is out there. Yep. I said a lot of times we just have to work 10 times harder than they do, but they're out there. It's not that they
That's
don't
what
exist.
Our grandparents told us to do.
And as a small business owner, I'm being transparent. I know about CRM systems, and I thought that this was something that was a little bit more for larger businesses. And it wasn't until it was brought to me and saying, no, this is for a small business as well. Just having somebody, this is a year into it. Like, imagine if I would have known about that, over a year ago when I relaunched, when I started this second business. Just understanding that resource and having somebody there to show, and it was free and all of these things, that could have helped me. It's kind of these information pieces that we're not necessarily told. And so when asked that question, it's kind of like, well, if it's already built in, people are already telling you, make sure your CRM system is up so you can make sure you don't have to be sending all these docs. Make sure, and it's those efficiencies that help small businesses continue and build,
and they can scale,
and they can scale because they have it. Not always just because of the lack of money, but it's really the lack of so many other resources and access.
That is true, but it does take money to have access to some of those resources, though, too. But no, you make a good point. I mean, resources just isn't financial. But I just remember the both of them, two lovely women, just in frustration, and the question was warranted. So which is why we have
absolutely
this
but
platform.
I think the only thing about the dollar is the fact that you either have it or you don't. So when you don't, you feel like you're just crushed.
Yeah.
And the reality is that it wasn't until I went to a workshop and a lawyer was on a panel, and he said, if you can buy me a really nice lunch, I could probably give you some information that's very different than you retaining me for $5,000, paying me $400 an hour. Mm-hmm. He's like, I know you don't have that. But he says, but I am in a space where buy me a nice lunch and let's have a conversation. That to me is a resource.
That is definitely a resource. And people don't leverage that. I've leveraged that.
And I feel bad for business owners that are like, oh my God, they feel so crushed and defeated. And I mean this in no ill will at all. But I will say is that our pride is our number one thing that actually is holding us back.
I agree with you,
right?
AJ.
If you ask the right questions, if you ask the right people, and that's the thing, this is where this is the segue into the allyship, right? You could ask your white counterparts.
Yep.
They may or may not give you everything, but they'll give you something.
Sure will.
Right? Mm-hmm. So don't have so much pride in whereas you're your own sort of like chopping off your leg kind of situation. Like, you have to go out there and seek the information. It's not all just going to come to you, right? The money may drop in somebody else's lap, but the hard work, the legwork, you have to do that on your own.
Absolutely.
100%. And so if these, I would invite these ladies to come and talk to us and to, you know what I'm saying? I want to, nobody's going to let that business fail except for you.
When you lose faith, you truly lost the game.
Exactly.
If you start in faith, the universe will give you, you would literally walk in a room and sit beside someone who has the answer that what you're looking for. I mean, seriously, I've seen it. It's happened to me.
It's happened to me too.
I didn't grow up with, I have 10 brothers and sisters. And so if I listened to my elementary school teacher that they told me that I wasn't going to amount to anything, if I would have listened to that, it would have clouded all of my decisions through life. I would have walked in fear, not in faith.
Right.
And so we tell these persons who are interested in entering the food industry, understand your industry, do your research. And sometimes the best way to start is helping someone else who's already doing what you want to do. Learn from that context. Yep. Find a mentor before you spend grandma's money that she gave you, her insurance, and go ahead and do it yourself. Help someone else lift. And in that context, you will find the secret to even lifting yourself. And that goes back to that cooperative economic. I could not do this without them, my partners, because they bring a context. Yeah, I know a lot of people and I know some stuff. But when we get in a trench, I know, shut up, AJ got that. I know, shut up, Dr. Tucker got that. And I know when they call me, they're calling me in love, saying, what's next? Because we love what we do and we're doing it for our people. And I say our people, meaning that any color, any person who has a desire to be professional in this industry, we have to work together. Like AJ said, we have to look at how do we lift the level of standards so that we can serve people really what they're looking for. Excellence.
Wow. Wow. So typically we take a break for our shows, right? I'm not taking one today.
Okay. You're in charge. We're loving it. You're in charge.
We're not taking a break today. The conversations are like, y'all are great. Y'all are great. I'm so entrenched in these conversations that I'm learning. I'm really learning. So I definitely want to touch on the conference that's coming up. And I know you guys have your hands full. So, Dr. Tucker, you're going to tell us when the conference is. You're going to tell us what those who are attending, like what they can pull from the conference, and how patrons like me can support the week and beyond. Because it's not just about the
100%.
conference;
Yes.
it's beyond the conference too. So,
well, this year's conference is Wednesday, November the 6th, 2019 at Georgetown University School of Continuing Studies, which is on 640 Massachusetts Avenue Northwest. So not over in Georgetown, but more by the Convention Center. And with that, this is an extension of our motto at DMV Black Restaurant Week, which is culture, education, and good food. So all of our programming fits one of those three. And this is the education. This is where you come out, you can learn just absolutely everything about whether starting a business, you have a product idea, you have a business already and you're trying to grow and scale. You lack a resource. We have a panel for that. So we are going to be talking about areas such as intergenerational wealth, which is something we started last year, which we'll continue. We have a government panel. Where how to do business with the government, because the government is always, it becomes cumbersome, but I think you just have to know the people, which people to go and ask for and what to specifically ask for. We're going to talk to that. We have a panel on the future of food and beverage, and we're focusing on blacks and beer. For that.
Oh, neat.
And that's definitely AJ's wheelhouse on that. And then we also have the power of ownership and collaboration, where we have owners actually on the panel talking about their journeys, because as we said, there's multiple ways to be in this space. Then we're going to close it out with a kind of a TED Talk, a little bit of a TED Talk style, where we'll have a representative from, even though there are these big brands, such as Yelp DC, Pepsi, as well as Events DC, they're going to talk about the power of brand, but understanding how brand connects to community and those avenues. And then we're going to have a phenomenal, instead of just having traditional lunch, we're going to have our caterers. We've partnered with Dreaming Out Loud, where we're going to have caterers, and you're going to be able to network and be right there in the space, in this educational space. So that's
a lot, man.
Yeah, but it's 8:30 to 2.
Yeah.
Come in the morning, 8:30. You have your lunch to be done. You can go at 2:00 the rest of your day. So,
wow.
Yeah.
And y'all sitting here talking to me, and y'all got all this work to do when y'all leave here.
We know when it's time to come to the mountaintop, so we know we're here, sister.
I like it, the mountaintop. So, AJ, I actually want to talk about a book that I'm not sure if it's out yet. Are you still working on it?
Not,
it's
actually,
not out.
and I'm gonna address all of that.
Oh,
And don't forget our cocktail competition too.
we
Competition.
beer. We have a beer being made. We have a
Yes.
cocktail competition. I'll get to that. But what's your question, my love?
so white plates, black faces.
That's
Did I get
me.
it right?
That's me.
That title says a lot,
Yes.
It does.
and I know you're still working on it. That's your baby. That's your project. Can you give us a brief synopsis as into
Yes.
what this book is about?
Yes. So a couple years ago, it takes a while to write a book.
It does.
It also takes a lot longer to write a book when people take your materials and your hard drive and run off with it for 3 months.
Oh, no.
So I finally got that back, which is great.
Okay,
I'm
good
very,
for
very
you.
happy about that. But the actual sort of content of the book is written. The idea behind that was I was going through the Washingtonian Top 100 in 2017. And there were 2 black-owned restaurants on that list, and only 2. One came in at number 76, I believe, or number 72, and the other one came in at 96. And then it sort of prompted me to keep going back a little bit, keep going back. And I saw that there were no other black-owned restaurants in the top 100. I went back as far as, I believe, 9 years at that point. And so I was corrected after having started my book that Cork was on the list, because one of the owners is Black. So that was the only other one, and that was 2014. But we're talking about 10 years of 3 different states. DC's not a state, but 3 different states, over 100 restaurants, and not one of them was Black owned. And so that really, it put me on a different sort of, in a different mindset, because at that point I was an investor and an owner in a business. And I still am an investor in this business, but I was one of those people, and I thought that my restaurant was pretty damn good. And we didn't make that list, but I always looked at it just to be sure. But it really just, I had to delve into that a little bit. And so I just put out a Facebook post and was like, hey, Black people, I need you to come together. I need to ask you questions. I need to talk to you. Because is there a reason why, I've been working with a lot of people for a long time. I've been in this business for 18 years. Started as a hostess and a dishwasher, working my way up to ownership, right? Putting down $40,000 in a business. How come more of us haven't done this? And that's what sparked it, right? And I wanted to focus on fine dining for sure, but it really was sort of all around. We don't own the businesses in our hoods, and we don't own the businesses in our old hoods, if you know what I mean by that. So it was eye-opening for me. And really what I did is I did 2 different segments. It was much more of like a written, an interview style, and then it was also visual. So I did a lot of filming around the city. I did a lot of round tables and things like that with some really amazing colleagues, and really just wanted to put forth a true and honest depiction of how and what we experience in this and what our roadblocks are. Because I think that's also sort of the question. It was like, well, why can't we get there? It's restaurants. Everybody loves people in the restaurant industry. Black, blue, brown, blah, 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 blah. It is the industry of redemption. If I will say, you don't have to have a college degree. You don't have to even really graduate high school. You just have to be really good at your job, and you can go far. However, you can be good at your job and go far if you look a certain way, if you conform to certain rules, if you are not Black. And that's sort of what it came down to. I was really trying to maybe that's not the answer. No, that's 100% the answer, especially when it comes to fine dining. And so I just wanted to blow the lid off of that a little bit.
And you blowing the lid off?
Yeah.
All right, sister. I can't wait to read that.
Yeah. That'll be out in two variations. So there is an actual written novel, and then I'm also doing, which I'm going to actually start next year, is doing more of it'll be more of a coffee table style book where we feature Black people in hospitality.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
That's what's up. All right, y'all be on the lookout. She gonna blow the lid off.
But tell us about this beer too.
Oh yeah,
and the cocktail competition that is so unique.
And you know what's interesting is the fact that when I mentioned it to someone, I got a response. Black people drink beer.
Yes,
it was a question.
Yeah. Black people drink beer, and I'm like, see, this is once again this mindset. That's why we got to do it.
Change the game up.
Yeah.
Change the game.
What are you talking about?
So I mean, I guess it was a few months ago. Now it's the summertime. We really started thinking about it. We were going to pair up with another DC brewery, and that kind of fell through. But in February at Radical Exchange, which is run by Kassira Hill and Ashton Berry and Eric King, they're amazing.
Yeah,
It was such an amazing trip. But I met a guy named T.O. Hunter. He was on a panel there, and we were actually leaving our plantation visit, actually. And everybody was so down, and they gave us these little pouches of these little fruit punch pouches with alcohol, and it was amazing. And everybody just kind of opened back up again, and we just got to talking. And he was he was very, very influential in terms of making me even feel inclusive in a beer space. I am a certified beer server with Cicerone. I feel like it's part of my job as a beverage director to know a lot about everything. And so I took the steps to do that. And meeting this man made that decision for me even more validating, right? And he's like, look, I run this podcast called Dope and Dank. I'm out of California. That was another connection that we had. And so we just sort of got to talking. And when it came down to DMV Black Restaurant Week, I wanted to do something special this year. I just didn't know how to do it. And since this idea of brewing a beer had already sort of fallen through, already. It was like he came to me and was like, look, we're gonna do a beer. It doesn't matter. Like, let's just figure out how we can do this and let's make it work. And he did. And so we have Kevin Blodger from Union Brewing Company. Thank him very, very much because he decided to rebrew the beer. It was a one release, like a one-time release collaboration beer between Union Brewing, Aslan, and Crowns and Hops, and it's called Building Bridges. And Building Bridges. What we do. And it's one of those things, like, it really is about reaching across the aisle. If you ever go to a beer event, if you ever go to, like, a beer festival, if you don't have a beard and a big belly and are white, they are not going to respect your beer at all. And it's hard for a woman to break in. It's much harder to be black and a woman and break in. And the fact that Crowns and Hops is run by a woman, a black woman at that, Benny is amazing. Like, she's on her game and she understands the world and the culture and is sort of, and not trying to flip and present as white. Right? Or stand in the background, right? Tio and Benny are really sort of putting their color and what they do in the forefront. And that's why I thought it was so amazing that this beer that they created with Union and Aslan was really about reaching across the aisle. And there was definitely some scuffles on social about that beer. You know, like there was some people who were like, oh, you have to be a Democrat to drink this beer. And it's like, come on.
Oh,
you know, it's stuff like that where it was really like, okay, this is why the beer is being made, right? Mm-hmm. Black people do drink beer. Black people do collect rare bottles. Black people do stand in line and want to go and buy those re-releases and things like that. And for that very reason, it's a lot easier to be like, hey, cocktails, boom, okay, fine. But beer was something that was like, from our perspective and from how I looked at it for DMV Black Restaurant Week, for those restaurants that are not Black owned or POC owned and they still wanted to support but feel awkward supporting because they don't want to come off as like trying too hard, it's a beer. Everybody's gonna drink the beer. It's a 7.5% West Coast IPA beer, right?
That you can pick up throughout the city.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And the cocktail competition, it would be another place that you can experience the beer and some amazing young mixologists who are coming together to say, you know, we're in this space for real. We've always been here. We linked up. Why don't you tell us about this amazing night at Ben's upstairs?
You guys got a lot going on.
We do have a lot
going on. You can tell me in 30 seconds. I got to wrap up in just a few moments, but I definitely want to hear about this.
So our Bowie cocktail competition, we did it last year. It was amazing. This year I had them do a little bit of work. They had to do 2 cocktails this year, but they really had to dive into some history. The Foxtrap Town Club used to be on 1601 R Street Northwest, and that is where everybody came to boogie down in DC.
Yes.
So DC had a drinking culture before everybody was pushing like Hennessy and Douce down our throats. We actually had our own space. We had our own way of expressing ourselves and going out and creating our own fun that wasn't dictated by anything else, right? And so I really wanted a cocktail. I wanted the contestants to create a cocktail that was inspired by that. And then also I wanted them to dive into the history of actual Black bartenders, that some of them actually bought their freedom by bartending. They bought bars by bartending. They were able to free their wives,
families.
Right? Their families.
You know what I'm saying? Buy them out of slavery by doing this for all the rich white men on Capitol Hill. And most of these gentlemen were right around this Mason-Dixon line, right? Virginia, Maryland, D.C. And so you had to create a cocktail inspired by that as well. And that is November 4th. That is the Monday at Ben's Upstairs.
So come and experience it.
Yes.
I love this. And
cocktails.
so much history.
It's all about
Yes,
we stand on the shoulders of our ancestors, and we continue to respect those shoulders by continuing to call their names. When we do our libations, it's seriously because people before us made it possible for us to be us.
Oh my gosh. Say it again, brother.
Seriously.
Do you even remember what you said?
This is how we live. Our ancestors has made it possible. And it is disrespectful for us not to continue to give homage to those who've come before us. But we have to bridge to the young people coming after us, because that's the other thing that we do at Black Restaurant Week. We are training tomorrow's food service professionals. We have a dinner coming up. My grandfather is 100 years old, And we have a dinner called the Bridge that's going to be happening.
Ooh, I love it, the Bridge.
And we can come back and talk more about that.
Yes,
but
please.
if we don't train tomorrow's food service professionals the right way, it's not on anybody else. It's on us.
Yes.
So we honor our history, but we sustain our history in our now, but we make sure the roots are strong enough to sustain tomorrow, our children coming behind us. And that's what we have to do in every action of service.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. We need more time. So y'all coming back after the event, right? So we're going to do a recap because I want to keep up on everything that you guys have going on. Thank you for having this platform to support our Black hospitality here in the DMV.
Thank you for having this platform.
Seriously, we both saw a void, and it's definitely needed.
Yes.
So sometimes I'm like, we all we got, we got to support each other. We have to create that bridge. And being a resource, whether it's financial or having these realistic, transparent conversations is so important. And so, I'm rooting for everybody Black, right?
And everyone listening should be sharing this context, this whole thing, your movement. Everyone that hears you every week needs to be sharing you with all their friends. Play it anywhere you possibly can to share this space.
Yes.
Because I definitely know we are grateful for what you do and who you are.
Thank you so much. All right, so we typically do a rap fire. We're going to do like a remix of this, but tell folks where they can find DMV Black Restaurant Week on the interwebs.
Absolutely. www.dmvbrw.com at DMVBRW.
Awesome.
On all the platforms.
Check them out, guys. Check them out. I know y'all eat at some of them restaurants they be featuring. I know y'all do. Okay, so we're going to do a very short round. I have these rapid fire questions. So, Dr. Tucker, I'm going to start with you. What is your favorite veggie?
Broccoli and spinach.
Yum. I like broccoli and spinach. Greens. All right. AJ.
Yeah.
Sweet, spicy, sour, salty.
Spicy, salty.
Spicy, salty.
Yeah.
I knew you were going to give me two, especially as a beverage connoisseur over here. Know all the flavors. Okay, Farad. Last artist you listened to in your playlist?
Will Downing.
Will Downing.
Oh, my God.
All right, so I'm going to leave this up to whoever wants to answer this question. Maybe I'll give it to AJ. One action step someone can take towards edible activism.
Asking for help. Always ask for help. You are at your weakest if you cannot admit that you need help.
Set that pride to the side. Thank you guys again for being here. I really appreciate you. All right. Peace, everybody.
Peace.
Peace.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We are here live on Full Service Radio every Wednesday at 11 a.m., where you can catch today's episode on fullserviceradio.org, as well as iTunes and Spotify. Be sure to follow me at Food Talks in Color on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Are you an edible activist? Sure you are. Come join me on the show. I would love to feature you. Just shoot me a DM on the gram. Peace and blessings all. And remember, there is no culture without agriculture.
Thanks for listening to this program on Full Service Radio, broadcasting and recording from the Line Hotel in Adams Morgan, Washington, D.C. Full Service Radio programming can be accessed live and archived on fullserviceradio.org. Our talk programming is available on most podcast apps like iTunes and Stitcher, and our DJ sets are available on mixcloud.com/fullserviceradio. Full Service Radio features over 30 weekly shows and over 50 local hosts covering every topic imaginable. If you want to be a guest or get involved, email us at info@fullserviceradio.org. Follow us on Twitter at FullServiceRDO, on Instagram and Facebook at Full Service Radio. Thanks for listening.